Welcome to Fantasy Football Today Dynasty. I am your host, Heath Cummings, and it is a one-man mailbag. We've got some great questions from the email, from the Facebook group. Do you know we had a Facebook group? Yeah, go find Fantasy Football Today on Facebook. Rob does a great job running that. Sent me over a question. And you guys will probably not be surprised to know that a great number of questions coming in this week about Garrett Wilson. In fact, the first question I see in the chat, it's a question about Garrett Wilson. Should I trade Tucker Kraft, Garrett Wilson, Calvin Ridley, and a 2027 first for Jamar Chase? I'm in fourth place at 6-4. Wow, that seems like a lot. I would try to get it done without the 2027 first, but it does kind of lead us into the early theme of today's show. What do we do with Garrett Wilson now out 3 to 4 weeks? Honestly, the way this Jets season is going, I'm not sure what I would expect from Garrett Wilson the rest of the fantasy football season. We certainly don't expect that he's going to help you in the regular season. And I actually have a team that is, I believe, 8-2 now, tied for first place with Nick Costas and Jamie Eisenberg in the YOLO Dynasty League. And Garrett Wilson is one of my wide receivers. I'm going to be shopping him. I think if you are a contender, it is time to go see, first off, like what type of pick do I have to add to Garrett Wilson to get a CeeDee Lamb, a Rashee Rice? I mean, it's going to be expensive, but he still holds a lot of dynasty value. That was one of the questions that we got from Twitter. Dre asked, with Wilson being banged up and the Jets drafting a QB probably early next year, what's the long-term outlook for this young wide receiver? Are we holding or selling? And honestly, I think this summer I wrote about it. Garrett Wilson was one of my most rostered wide receivers in Dynasty, and I was lower than consensus at that point. He's still just 25 years old. In fact, closer to turning 25 than 26. So we're nowhere close to even worrying about Garrett Wilson's age. He's currently my wide receiver 22, which puts him right in the same range. That seems too low, honestly, when I say it out loud. But there's so many good young wide receivers. It puts him right in the same range as Travis Hunter, Jalen Waddle, George Pickens, Devontae Smith, Chris Olave, Zay Flowers. And that's kind of the cutoff in terms of the younger guys. I think T. Higgins might be somebody who's a little behind Wilson in my rankings. That is a contender I would be looking to target if he's not on a team. I would be interested to hear from you guys in the chat. Like, if you have a contending dynasty team with Garrett Wilson, who's the wide receiver that you're looking to go add? As a reminder, if you could like and subscribe, that'd be really helpful. Also, it's a mailbag day, so if you have questions, get those questions in the chat. When I get through the emails and the Facebook comments and all the other stuff, I will save a little bit of time if I'm able to save a little bit of voice for your questions from the chat. Always appreciate answering your questions. We had one more Garrett Wilson adjacent question. Mike in the Facebook group had two grade the trades. So he traded Garrett Wilson for DJ Moore, Jawan Jennings, and Jordan Mason. That makes me want to buy Garrett Wilson, Mike. I'm sorry, I cannot give you a good grade on that trade. I'll say D-, but I think I'm being nice. I do think that like Jawan Jennings is somebody who's better than Garrett Wilson rest of season, but who knows what he's got left. DJ Moore not trending in the right direction in Chicago, and Jordan Mason may just be a handcuff now. He had a second trade, though. It was grade the trades from Mike. He traded Tyler Warren for a Rondé Gadsden and Devontae Smith. I think you did much better on this deal. Just looking at my trade chart, the difference between Warren and Gadsden is much smaller than the value of a Devontae Smith, who has really emerged. I mean, I ranked Smith over A.J. Brown last week and felt a little gross about it. This week, it wasn't even a consideration. Like, Devontae Smith's just been awesome. A.J. Brown can't get on the same page as Jalen Hurts, it doesn't seem, or the play caller. So I love that second trade, Mike. You get an A for that one, but the first one I wasn't quite as fond of. Kate sent us in an email. And I actually answered Kate's email. I do that occasionally through the email, not just on the show. So if you want to send an email to fftdynasty@paramount.com, I try to answer those as often as I can. Kate is number one in the standings, number one in points. Great way to go. Obviously, listening to FFT Dynasty, but ran into a QB issue. Had Lamar Jackson and Jaden Daniels, had traded Bo Nix in the offseason. The backup, she traded a 2027 third for Aaron Rodgers earlier in the year. I like that deal a lot. But now that Daniels is hurt again, she's wondering, do I go get another quarterback? Somebody had offered her Sam Darnold for her 2026 first. And this is kind of the point in the season where I think if you're first in points and you're first in the standings, you can feel relatively comfortable believing that your first round pick in 26 is going to be at worst or at best 9th overall. Sounds like you're going to get that first round bye. So you're going to be in the semifinals. You're going to have one of those final 4 picks, a good chance it's 11 or 12. And with the way this 2026 class is being viewed right now, I think it is probably a late first is more like a round 2 value than a round 1 value. I actually told Kate I would go ahead and make that deal. I'd go ahead and Darnold coming off of a bad game where he only threw 12 passes, but he's going to be a solid QB3. And if Rodgers is your QB2, you're probably going to be starting Darnold about half the time. I certainly, looking at the schedule, know that I don't want to start Rodgers in week 17, I think it is, against the Browns. So I'd make that deal. I think Darnold's worth a very late 2026 first if you're a true contender. Scott had sent up an email, and this is, I think, for dynasty managers, these aren't the guys that get all the clicks, but they are the decisions that drive us dynasty managers crazy. He said, when do I give up on Ben Sinnott? Now, funny thing, he sent the email in before this week. Ben Sinnott scores the touchdown, so we feel a little bit better about him. But those 2024 rookies who really just did not do what we were hoping they would do, the value's gone down quite a bit. How long do you hold on to those guys? That for me, it's really more of a question about what am I doing this year? If I'm in a rebuild, I'm probably trying to hold on to those guys, especially guys that just haven't really gotten the opportunity yet. It's a much different thing if somebody's playing 70% of the snaps and just producing nothing after 2 years. But Zach Ertz is going away at some point. Now, is Sinnott going to fill that role? I don't know for sure. The only way I'm holding him probably is if I'm not contending this year. If you're contending, then I think this is the level of player that we can probably kiss goodbye. And that goes for most of the 2024 rookies who just have not contributed anything at all. We're going to take our first break. When we get back, we've got Twitter questions about Brian Thomas Jr., Travis Hunter, Trey McBride, Harold Fannin, much, much more right after this.
This is European soccer's biggest stage.
Written in the stars! What a difference she has made!
The question is, can you handle it?
Can you handle it?
The crowd here feels electric. Stream every match of the UEFA Women's Champions League on Paramount+.
We are back. We see a couple of questions in the chat, and we will definitely have time for at least 2 or 3 of those. Tim sent in a tweet or a post from X. If you've made that change, I still haven't. As a dynasty manager who rosters both Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter, if you had to choose one going forward, who would you choose? I have been very, very stubborn with both of these Jacksonville wide receivers. I get messages semi-regularly. Why is Brian Thomas Jr. still so high in your dynasty rankings? I just refuse to believe that he forgot how to catch the football. He's been banged up all year. I still think he's a great buy low candidate. I still have both Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter in my top 18 dynasty wide receivers. So yes, both of them still currently ahead of Garrett Wilson. I would take Brian Thomas Jr. over Travis Hunter, but at their current dynasty cost, I'm not selling either. I'm buying both. I think both of these guys have shown us enough reason to believe that they could be very impactful wide receivers in the future. Both still extremely young, high upside. I don't think you sell low on guys like this. And Hunter was maybe in a slight window of selling high after his one really great game this year, but then immediately went on IR. I'm just holding both. But if I had to, for some reason in a dynasty world, choose between the two, I would have Brian Thomas Jr. higher. Jake says, who are your favorite end of bench targets / dart throws? And again, we get into this situation where it's really dependent on where your roster is at the time. If you're contending right now, I want to make sure every backup running back who could in some universe end up seeing touches is on my roster. If I am in a rebuilder, I'm looking at those young wide receivers, maybe some of the backup quarterbacks. I'm still rostering Tyler Shuck, despite how bad he's looked. I think I've got a Shedeur Sanders on a roster, not a contending team, but those types of guys. And then look for these rookie wide receivers who haven't really popped yet and see if some of the contenders are having to let them go. I definitely still want to roster those guys as well. But for the contenders, it's really more about the handcuff running backs. And then one more that may have been dropped in leagues that don't have enough IR spots. Brenton Strange had his window just reopened. He was a big part of this offense before he went down. He could have a big role down the stretch, especially if Hunter and Thomas can't get it right. Go make sure that he's not available in your league. We got one from Curtis here on the other end of the spectrum. How do you manage your dynasty team when you have a lead in first place at this point in the season? How do you handle being aggressive and acquiring players to help you versus trying not to have too many tough lineup decisions every week? And I don't like those tough lineup decisions. I definitely don't think that contenders should be worrying too much about adding depth at this time. This is more of a consolidation period of time. So I'm looking for guys who I think can be truly elite in the fantasy playoffs and push me over the top to get that championship. I'm willing to do more 2-for-1 type deals, even where I'm giving away two guys who might be starters on someone else's roster. The other thing I will say, and I'm really hesitant, I've already got several dynasty teams where I've given up a couple of 2026 picks, and I'm fine with that as a contender. Always nervous about giving up picks the following year because you just don't know how good you're going to be next year. And this 2027 draft class is looking like it. I mean, we laugh all the time about the cycle of this, right? We get really excited about the year that's not quite here yet. But I think 2027 looks so good as a rookie draft class. I'm probably, in most cases, trying to hold on to the 2027 picks. May have to make an exception to that in the league I was talking about earlier, where I had Garrett Wilson, and I want to move him to get an elite wide receiver for this year. I may have to give up some 2027 picks to get that deal done. So it is one of those things where you kind of have to balance. Do you think that you're for sure a contender next year? Are you an old contender this year that could take a step back next year? I'd like to hold on to those 2027 picks if I can. But again, don't worry too much about adding depth this late in the year. I'm more interested in adding superstars. FF Debate brings up a sore subject. Where do you now put Purdy? Like you, I was very high on him. I still am. But has his value tumbled to the QB 10 to 12 range from the earlier QB 8-9? So this is a tricky one because I think he was a 10 to 12 guy for everyone else before the season. I had him higher than that. His value certainly has fallen. My most recent dynasty quarterback rankings, which will be coming out Wednesday or Thursday. Remember, the trade chart gets updated every single week during the season. You can subscribe to Sportsline. You can get access to my 1 QB trade chart, my Superflex trade chart, the positional dynasty rankings, quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end. That's updated for free at cbssports.com/fantasy every Wednesday or Thursday. I've already got most of those updates done. I still have Brock Purdy at QB 12. If you're a true contender, he probably falls down to 13 or 14 because a couple of the older guys that are behind him. I still have Purdy ahead of CJ Stroud. He's ahead of Bo Nix in terms of the younger guys, ahead of Cam Ward, of course. Right behind Jackson Dart. Honestly, I don't feel like there's a whole lot of separation there. Dart has been remarkable at producing fantasy points, Purdy has been the most efficient passer in the NFL basically since he became a starter. Those two guys kind of the very end of the QB1 rankings. I think Purdy's value has fallen down to QB 15 or 16 on most trade charts, most other sites. So he's still a buy for me, but it's hard to buy him if you're a contender because I don't know when or if they will go back to him this year. I do feel pretty confident he'll be the starter next year. Randy sent in a tweet, says, I have Trey McBride. I drafted Oronde Gadsden and Harold Fannin. This is a great humble brag. It's also a problem I think a lot of people have because Gadsden and Fannin were 3rd and 4th round picks. And so you weren't really thinking, oh, I don't need a tight end. You were just taking the best player available. Now you find yourself with 3 of my top 7 tight ends in the dynasty rankings. He says, what should I expect for them in return as a contender? I was offered Jamison Williams for Gadsden before this last week and declined. Does Dan Campbell taking play calling make JMO's weekly prospect look better? And I think it does. It's funny. I just updating the trade charts. I wanted to go look like where is Jamison Williams in regards to Harold Fannin and Oronde Gadsden. I have Fannin worth 11.9 points in the Superflex trade chart. JMO's worth 11.7. Gadsden's worth 10.4. Now, I think some people do have Gadsden ahead of Fannin, but those guys are right in the same range. And if you're not going to be starting Fannin or Gadsden this year, JMO's still extremely young. So it's not like you're giving up a lot in terms of age there, more with Fannin than with Gadsden. But I that is a type of deal that I'd be interested in. Other guys that I have in the same range of them that would help a contender, T. Higgins, A.J. Brown, Chase Brown, and then Travis Etienne, I think, is somebody that's you can probably get Travis Etienne plus because most people are lower on him than I am. I have Etienne right behind Gadsden, basically at the same value. So there's some guys that could definitely help your roster depending on what position you need. Not a lot of quarterbacks in that range. Most the actual starting quarterbacks are ahead of those tight ends, and I don't want to trade one of those tight ends for a speculative. At the same time, I think you may, depending on your roster, just be able to flex those guys and be just as well off. So we have another question from Miguel. If a contender has a surplus of running back starters and no picks, so he has Gibbs, Genty, Jacobs. Gibbs, Genty, Jacobs. Wow. Rico, Swift, Vidal, and Monangai. Should I try to sell any of them for picks or just hold? So I think what I'd want to look at as a contender is could I upgrade my wide receiver 2 into a wide receiver 1 with one of those running backs? So can I sell Rico and whoever my number 2 wide receiver is for a top 5, top 10 type wide receiver? Or can I sell 2 of those running backs and go get McBride or Bowers or something like that? So I would be looking to consolidate. I don't often trade for picks when I'm contending. Like I want to go win the championship. But I do think if you can't get an upgrade done out of your position, if you're just this deep everywhere and you're going to steamroll to a championship, then yeah, trying to get a second round pick for one of those guys you're not starting makes all the sense in the world. I probably wouldn't leave all those guys on my bench. AJ sent in a grade the trade. This will be a Twitter question. I think I have one more email to read, maybe 2. And then I will get to your questions from the chat. But we just got an email that came in during the show. So I hope it's a good one. I'm going to just read it, and I hope it's a good one. But grade the trade was traded Bill and a 2026 second for Travion and a 2027 third. AJ, I think you made this trade before last week, and you just want to get an A+. It's an A+. And I would have given it an A before this week. But no, after the Travion breakout, and doesn't that feel good? We spent such a high pick on Travion Henderson. It was such a frustrating start to the season. And now all of a sudden it seems like he was worth it. One player that I would put in that bucket that maybe hasn't done it yet, but we might feel the same way about pretty soon is Luther Burden. He looks so fantastic with the football in his hands. I tweeted something out about it yesterday about how much better he and Colston Loveland have been than Olamide Zaccheaus and Cole Kmet. And then I saw like 6 other fantasy analysts did the same thing. And then Ben Johnson was asked about Luther Burden and said there's a very strong case that we need to get the ball in his hands more often. So when you have young, exciting rookies that are doing exciting things but not getting the playing time or the touches that we want, I think you dynasty managers should know we're holding or we're buying. And you may even want to add Luther Burden to a redraft bench and just see, So let's see. Dave sent in an email during the show. I think the first live email we've ever read. In my one dynasty league for teams that did not make the playoffs, draft position is based on potential points. Potential points are the points you could have got if you set a perfect lineup every week. The non-playoff team with the lowest amount of potential points throughout the year gets the first pick. I have Team A's 2026 second-round pick. Currently, Team A is in playoff position, but TA also has the lowest amount of potential points for the year. I can see a scenario where the last week of the regular season, if the team I'm playing against wins, Team A will be eliminated from playoff contention, giving me the first pick in the second round of the draft. If that scenario comes to fruition, would you have any problem with me tanking the last week of the season if my playoff position's locked in and make sure that Team A gets eliminated and my pick turns into the first pick of the second round? Wow. That was a great email. Thank you, Debo, for sending that to me during the show. I think I've told you guys that as far as tanking goes, I've pretty much gone to I'm not policing it. Total points scored will be the tiebreaker, and record will determine the picks. But this league has different settings, and I don't see anything wrong with resting your starters if you've locked up a playoff spot to improve one of your other draft picks. Somebody probably will. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody in the chat does pretty soon. But I really don't. I think that's good strategy. You are losing on purpose, but you're losing on purpose to benefit your own team. And that makes perfect sense to me. You guys got to know the rules of your league, play within those rules, but take advantage of them where you can. And that sounds like exactly what you're doing, Dave. I like it a lot. We had another question, an email that came in from Kevin, and it was a long one, and Kevin acknowledged it was a long one, so I'm not going to read it all. In fact, I often edit your emails when you send them in to me. But he's the commissioner. It's everyone's first year doing Dynasty. And in the first year of the league, first year and a half in a league, he has made 24 trades. And he's worrying that he is maybe making the league worse by trading too much. Worried that he's going to make a league-shifting trade and people will leave. Listen, I've seen leagues ruined by inactivity. I don't think I've seen, you always hear that you got to veto some trades because it'll ruin the league. I've never actually been a part of a fantasy football league that fell apart because of too many trades. I haven't actually been a part of a fantasy football league that fell apart because of a bad trade. They can fall apart because of collusion. They can fall apart because of bad commissioners. They can fall apart because of inactivity. But I don't think your league's going to fall apart because you're making too many trades. It takes two to tango. Somebody's making all these trades with you. And he said he finished, I think, 5th last year, and he's just doing right in the middle of the pack this year. It's not as if he's making all these trades and then dominating the league or vice versa. So no, good job. Thank you for being active. Everybody should be active. I won't reference the people that are currently in my leagues that I wish would be more like you, or at least set a lineup. Mike asked, is it time to worry about Courtland Sutton? Now, there was one time earlier this year where I think we asked this question, and Sutton came out and had a great game. But he just turned 30. In fact, a month ago, he turned 30. He's being out-targeted by Troy Franklin on the season and dominated in targets over the last 3 weeks. 14 targets in his last 3 games, 8 catches in those 3 games. He's been over 70 yards once in his last 5. You guys have heard me say this during the offseason, that my feeling on older wide receivers is when they start to show you they're slipping, believe them. Now, the one caveat I'll add here is Sutton has still been much more productive on a per target basis than Troy Franklin has. I don't think he's going to break out against the Chiefs, and they do have a tough schedule, but I wouldn't just write Courtland Sutton off. But yes, it is time to at least be a little bit worried. I would not be buying him thinking there's a bounce back coming. It's going to help me win my league this year. I've been pretty low on him in terms of dynasty ranking. Right now, he's down to wide receiver 48. I think I'd rather have Deebo Samuel, who's kind of in the same situation. He is still ahead of Terry McLaurin and Chris Godwin and Juwan Jennings and guys like that for me. But I don't necessarily view him as a must start this week. And when you've got a guy who's fallen into that maybe start range and they're 30 years old, yeah, it's a pretty big concern in Dynasty. We got another question here about Jacoby Myers. Is Jacoby Myers for a 2027 second a decent replacement for Garrett Wilson? I have Puka and Waddle in a super flex PPR league. So no, I don't think Jacoby Myers is going to be a good replacement for Garrett Wilson. If you are a true contender and you think, I look at it and I'm going to have one of those last 4 picks, so we're looking at pick 20 through 24. Well, it's 2027 second. You don't even know that. I would aim higher. If I was trading my 2026 second as a true contender, I think I could do that for Jacoby Myers. Just a random second that could turn into a good pick. I'm not at all confident that Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter are going to be irrelevant, that Brenton Strange won't come back and put a dent in this, that Parker Washington won't be the best Jacksonville wide receiver. I think Myers is a good dart throw. I'd rather do it for a third or a guaranteed very late second round pick, which would have to be this year. We've got a couple more questions in the chat here. I got a couple more words I can say before my voice gives out. I mean, this isn't you're just giving an opinion. Okay, let's take an opinion here from the Green Blocker. Rule opinion. Dynasty leagues I have run have a score minimum, which is you can start whoever you want or no one at all. But if you score during the week is under the score, I've spin a wheel and drop 3 players. No, I don't like that at all. Just let people tank. Like, have you watched the NFL this year? There's a couple tanking teams. Just let them tank. Let's see. Good boy, Troy. I'm pretty stacked at wide receiver. JSN, Flowers, Addison, Marvin Harrison Jr., but dying at QB in a 1 QB draft. I have Love and Flacco. Thinking about trading Marvin Harrison Jr. for Jalen Hurts for consistency. Listen, I have Marvin Harrison Jr. as my number 8 wide receiver in Dynasty. I'm not going to be able to get behind this deal in a vacuum. There's a significant difference. Hurts is worth 15.8 in the 1 QB trade chart. Harrison's worth 28.5. So that's a huge difference for me. I understand being stacked at wide receiver. I understand needing an elite quarterback and wanting to win the league. I don't think I would go that far. I think I'd probably try to trade somebody worth a little bit less for a quarterback who's valued a little bit lower and just see if you can win it that way. It's, man, I'd hate to give away what could be. I think they're changing the offense after this year in Arizona. They may have a new quarterback after this year. Marvin Harrison Jr. could be just a top 12 wide receiver as soon as next year. One more question from the chat. It's a Jets fan. It's the least we could do. Rebuilding team, strong at running back. Sounds very much like the Jets. Weak other places. Yep, that's the Jets. Injury issues at wide receiver. Yep, that's the Jets. I have Cook, Hall, Brown, and Charbonnet. What type of return should I be getting to trade away running backs? So if you're rebuilding, I would see first what I could get for Chase Brown. James Cook's obviously going to get you the most, but he probably still has 2 elite years left. I think same thing for Breece Hall, and you're a Jets fan. So looking at if you're trying to find wide receivers on my trade chart that are in the Chase Brown range, you know what? Go see what the AJ Brown manager says. I mean, you're obviously looking at teams. Maybe go see what the Jameson Williams manager says. If you have to go a little bit lower than that, and it doesn't sound like, I mean, you're rebuilding and you have running backs, you might want to trade 2 of these guys. As a rebuilding team, I would go see if I could get Luther Burton. So I scratch the AJ Brown. I forgot about the rebuilding part. Go see if Luther Burden, Ricky Pearsall, see if you can get Matthew Golden plus for Chase Brown. If you decide, and I don't think it would be a bad idea if there's a contending team out there looking for a running back that really wants James Cook, maybe go see if you could get Marvin Harrison Jr. Most people don't have him top 8 like I do. Maybe go see if you get a Roma Dunze or Brian Thomas Jr. plus for James Cook. You might get a very good pick with Thomas Jr. And if he just bounces back next year, like I think he will, that's going to feel very good for a rebuilding team. That's going to do it for the one-man mailbag in November. We'll have another one of these in December. You can send your emails into fftdynasty@paramount.com. I'll try to answer those before the next mailbag, but we will talk to you next Tuesday.